I want to tell y'all real quickly about a couple of dreams I had a few years back. I won't go into lots of details. I'll come back later and read the dreams because I wrote them down, but I don't have the phone with me right now that I wrote them on. But I did document the dreams in full detail, and I have the interpretations, but this was years ago, so I don't remember everything 100%, but I do want to share a few things that stood out, and I think they are speaking to where we are now and what's coming, or what's possibly coming next. I say possibly because in the prophetic, God shows you prophetic possibilities, shows you prophetic absolutes, and prophetic reality. So the prophetic reality is anything that God has prophesied that we're currently living in. That's the prophetic reality. The prophetic possibilities are certain things God says, if this, then that. You get what I'm saying? So some things are a possibility. For example, Jonah told the people of Nineveh God was going to overthrow them in 40 days. But they repented, and 40 days later, he did not overthrow them. So it was a possibility for them to be overthrown. It was a prophetic word. It was a true prophetic word, and it actually did come to pass about 100 years later. So maybe on God's timetable, that was 40 days, right? God's time is not ours, but it it did not happen in 40 literal days as we know days. Um, but it was a possibility that it could have in those 40 days. And then the prophetic absolutes are the things that God says it's just going to happen. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. There's no conditions on it. It's not a conditional word. It's just the word of the Lord. It's going to happen. Okay. So just want to make that plain and put that out there. So anyways, I had two dreams about three and a half years ago. The first dream, one thing I want to say about it, and I'm not going to go into details about the dream here because I don't remember every detail in sequential order like it's written. So I have to go and find that device and read it on another video so you can get the full gist of it. But the condensed version is this. The first dream, I remember there was a force of a military force within the USA, but it wasn't ours. It wasn't the United States Coast Guard or the military as we know it, but it was some type of military force that came to the U.S. and they were shooting people and setting up barricades, and people could function within their zones where they were barricaded in. But if they tried to leave those zones for whatever, any reason, then they were shot and killed if they got, outside of those zones or tried to cross those barricades. The soldiers had all types of guns. And the people that had done this, the one thing I remember thinking in my dream was, where's our government? Why are they letting this happen? And it was as if this was the United Nations or some world power. It wasn't just the United States. It was a power that seemed to have taken over the whole world quickly. And it came to America, and it started at the East Coast, and it was doing this with these cities, and it was working its way westward, taking over the whole nation. And I remember thinking, that's strange. Why is our government not stopping this? And it was as though, like, God was letting me see the government of the United States is complicit in some kind of way. They had sold us out. They had sold out the people of America to another system. Okay, that's what I saw in this dream. There was a whole lot more going on in that dream. And you have to catch the full version of that later, where I explain it in detail and give the interpretation, or at least partial interpretation, because sometimes we get dreams and they are layered. And so the layers of the dream, part of it could be for you personally, and some of it can be prophetic message for the people that you are called to or assigned to, to give a message to. So the other dream I had, the second dream, it involved the president, who's the current president right now, Donald Trump. In the dream, and this is the condensed version, in the dream, Donald Trump was saying some racist stuff, okay? And God was basically showing me through this dream what really was going on, was the racist comments he was making and the racism that was portrayed by him in this dream was really a smokescreen for the spirit of Antichrist. Okay, and so in this dream, racism was present, but it was being backed by another spirit greater than it, which is the spirit of Antichrist. And what God basically revealed is that the spirit of racism is a cover or a distraction, and it causes a spell to be put on the people, the masses of people, to where they don't see other things they should be seeing. And while the spirit of racism was in the land, another spirit was operating. Basically, this is the whole gist of the dream. So basically, at the end of the dream, there was a world power that came after Donald Trump, okay? And this person had military might. He was like some type of, he looked like a general or some type of high-ranking military personnel with stripes and all of that on, but he was not of American descent. He was more of a Middle Eastern, he was of a Middle Eastern descent. What part of the Middle East, I don't really know. But he come from that part of the world, I could tell. And I discerned quickly by looking at him. It was like, you know how you look at somebody and you like, oh, they got money, or oh, that person's powerful, or something like that. That person's persona in this dream, this guy, it was not said, but it was just discerned that he represented power, like authority, like he had a level of power that was greater than what, who most people say the most powerful man in the world is the United States president, right? They usually say the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. But this person, you could look at in this dream and you knew that some kind of way he was given a degree of power. And it was spiritual though, but he had this power, and it was like, you're looking at a boss, right? So he was looking around and looking towards the Americas. And you could tell he had conquest on his mind, but it was as if it was already done, if that makes sense. It was as if there was a special power granted to him, maybe from the Most High or maybe from the enemy, from the devil. I don't know, but it was spiritual. It's kind of like, I believe it was power given to him by the devil. And I'm going to tell you why I say that, because in the dream, Trump was being used as a figure of racism. I'm not saying Trump is racist. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying this was the dream, telling the dream as a dream. In the dream, he was definitely touting out racial slurs and doing some really evil stuff. And the other thing that God showed in the dream is that the spirit of racism that we're seeing now in America is also, in this dream, I saw that it also gave rise to a spirit of sexual perversion. That's what was coming after it, was sexual perversion, and not just sexual perversion, but through what is the word I'm looking for? Litigation, legalities, through the law. So through legislation, there's going to possibly be a movement of sexual misconduct, or what's the right word I'm looking for? Impure deviation or sexual deviance through laws. Okay, I also saw that. But anyways, all of the things that, those things, the racism and the sexuality, all that was a smokescreen, because at the end, Donald Trump, he morphed into this other person of this Middle Eastern descent, which I understand in the dream when that was happening, like Trump really doesn't represent himself per se as a person, but represents the position of power, or the office of president, or the spiritual occupation of power. Okay, because in order for you, every dignitary in the world, every person of high authority in the world, at some level there's a spiritual side of that. Either God is empowering you or the devil is empowering you, but God's still in charge of it all, right? Because the God is the devil's boss, right? So I saw that this person, it was Donald Trump, but then he literally shapeshifted into this other person, which I don't think Trump's gonna literally shapeshift, right? So it's showing a shifting of power is what I believe it represents. And I believe that God is showing through that dream, and I'll go back later and do the full details so you can really understand it and not be like confused as to where I'm going with it. But the main summary is what I'm saying right here. The summary is this. I believe that what we're seeing happening in our nation right now, the rioting, the looting, the so-called cry for justice, and I know there are some people who really want justice, but a lot of people are just following the crowd, following the hype, and they're saying because it's trending, but they don't care about justice. It's, because there's a whole lot of injustices that we tolerate or we even celebrate that we don't say anything about amongst our own people, black on black. We don't care when it's, we don't get that crazy about it, marching the streets when how many people got shot in Chicago last weekend? 59 people, but we don't even hear about that. So it's a lot of hypocrisy, and it's just a movement. But the thing is, all of this that's happening, the riots and the looting and the protesting, the hypocrisy that's fueling it, it's really just a smokescreen. And so while we're divided and not paying attention as a country, there's someone that has their eye on conquering us. And they don't care if you black or white. This movement, I'm telling you, they came and they did this to the whole country. Okay, they came and they bound up the whole country, and that's what I think this is really all about. Because the Holy Spirit was dealing with me earlier in the week or early in last week, right before the riots and stuff started, and he showed me the verse. He told me to look this verse up, and I looked it up, and it was the one that's talking about a kingdom divided. I want to say he said Mark 3:26 was the verse, if I remember correctly. And it talks about a kingdom being divided, it cannot stand, etc., etc. And I was like, why is God showing me this? What does this mean? And then the riots and stuff started happening. I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And then he reminded me of these dreams, and like, I needed to share this. So basically, the stuff we're seeing is really not what's all there. There's something else there. There's something else that Satan wants to do. Like, at the end result, at the end of that dream, when I saw this guy, this power figure, I also saw where some nations, they were determined to be war zones because apparently they weren't easily conquered through other means. And by other means, I'll explain that in a minute. But certain nations, it was written across those nations, and they had been covered in certain words, and I knew that those places, they're gonna have war. And it was places you probably don't think about war right now, because most of the time you think about war, most wars involve countries like Russia, the United States, France, Germany, stuff like that, or over in the Middle East, in those little small pockets, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and places like that, Israel, Jordan, Libya. Most of the times that's the places you think about when war, but like certain places you don't see, you never hear about them really having wars, not often, like, South America and different places like that. But what I saw was certain places that I never thought would be, war zones, they have been marked for war. And other places have been marked for deceit or deception, was the word written across those nations. And the United States of America had the word deception written across it, which is what I believe we're seeing a lot of right now, because we went from the coronavirus, and now they're barely even talking about that because of these riots. And now these riots are sparking, or at least the protests are sparking movements in other countries. And to some people, that's like, yeah, this is a victory. We got the whole world behind us. But it's a distraction. spiritual minds discern spiritual things, right? So it's a distraction because there's something bigger going on. There's a way bigger agenda. And I'm telling you, the spirit of racism that we're seeing in the United States of America is really being pushed by the spirit of Antichrist, because that is his cover. He's hiding behind that, and we're focusing on that and thinking we're claiming victories in these little areas or whatnot. But he's thinking of conquering the whole country. And I'm telling you, the enemies that America has, there's some enemies America has, they don't care what color your skin is. They only care if they can convert you to believe like they believe and control you and control the monetary systems and conquer everything about your country and make it operate like theirs. And I saw that our government sold us out. Okay. I saw that we didn't have a government anymore. We were under some kind of military, we were under some kind of rule, but they were using military might and force to enforce it, which I believe could possibly be Sharia law or Muslim rule, because they, that's kind of how, that's what they kind of believe. Like they believe in dominating. They believe in the word Islam means submit, right? Of course, they say it means to submit to God, or in their word for God, for their God is Allah, right? They believe in submit to Allah, but the thing is too, they are taught to make others submit to Allah, and that's a problem. If you don't believe that, then you have to now be met with whatever force or deception they use. And I know that that's how Islam operates. Okay, so, and I'm not saying all Muslims are radical Muslims or that there aren't peaceful Muslims. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that overall the theme that they teach is to become the most dominant religion in the world. And I'm not even saying that that's who we're dealing with, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind, that it could be Islam that is going to be where the power shifts to. I hope it's not, none of these things happen. I hope none of these things happen. I hope that we can pray and God will allow things to continue as they have in years previous, before 2020, because we don't want things to stay like they are right now. But we had some years where it was decent. We've been able to enjoy our liberties as Christians in America, as believers of the Bible and worshiping Yahweh, the God of the Bible. And with that, we've been able to enjoy a lot of benefits of safety and freedoms and peace and certain things we've been able to enjoy to a certain extent. We don't want to take those things for granted. So we want to pray about what I'm saying here, that God will give us strategy and that we will see how the enemy is moving and what he's really trying to do and how he's trying to destroy a whole lot of people, and that we don't just allow our gates to be left wide open while we're fighting or about black and white, or while we're marching and thinking we're claiming victory and getting justice, yet we miss what's going on over here because we're focused on this over there. So let us stay prayed up. I pray that God will give us wisdom, and that he will protect us from the evils that want to overrun this country, and from the government that wants to sell us out for whatever intent or purpose they would do such for. I pray that God would not allow that to happen as I saw it happen in the dreams, and that we would continue to be able to enjoy this great country that we have, and be able to worship God freely like we have been able to thus far. So take these things up in prayer, take it up to the Lord in prayer, get confirmation from God and he'll let you know this is from him or not. And once you know, then just pray accordingly, okay? I love you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and may God's peace surround you. May his protection be upon you, and may you follow his ordered steps and not be emotionally swayed by the things you're seeing, but be discerning spiritually, that you may walk in the spirit and not fulfill the lust of the flesh. All right, have a blessed week.